So first up, no need for an introduction. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. David Kibby.
Thanks, Dan. Cheers. Thanks, buddy. Cool. So, how do you follow that? It's my first question. But before I start, actually, just before I start, I'm just kind of curious now, having seen Richard do his amazing stuff. How many of you who are sitting here, by show of hands, how many of you are starting to think, do you know what, at some point, I'd like to speak at a Dan Bradbury conference? Just by a show of hands, how many of you? Fantastic. So there's a lot of people. Well, let me give you one piece of advice. And I know that, you know, as coaches, we're not really in the advice market, but I set a goal of speaking at Dan's conference. But here's what I didn't do. I didn't set the goal of speaking at Dan's conference and making sure you don't speak after Richard Wilkins, because that's a tough call. So before I start my story, which is lovingly entitled 15.5 Ways to Propel Your Coaching Business into the Slow Lane and Make It Stay There, I need to go back in time a little bit for you. And I need to go back to Christmas Day, 2008. Now, about you guys, but I love Christmas. I love Christmas, and I love all the kind of fun of it and everything with my children. I love it so much, I'm still watching Polar Express in April. That's how much I love Christmas. And so Christmas 2008, Christmas Day, I was still in my old job, managing director of an importing company. And I've been working really long, really hard during the course of the year. And I've been traveling overseas. I've been in China, and I've been in Europe because we were importing. We bought a lot of our goods in Asia. I've been away from home an awful lot. And finally, Christmas Day, I'm there with my family, with my boys, Tom and Alex, by the tree, and it's present opening time. And I feel good because I was very fortunate. There were many presents there. We live in a nice home. And I was feeling really, really good. And I sat there, and I'm watching the kids. You know the kind of way that kids peel things off? One of them peels it like this, and the other one's the mad, scrambly sort of guy, and he just rips everything off. And I'm sitting there, and I felt really, really proud as a father. And I watch all the presents unfolding, see what they've got, this present, the next one. And my parents were there. And they started opening their presents, and I was fascinated to see each of the presents. And my wife started opening her presents. And suddenly, in an instant, I got totally hit by the fact that all of the presents were a surprise for me. I had spent no time involved in the preparations for my family's Christmas whatsoever. I'd done an awful lot of business stuff. Now, normally, if I tell this story, what happens is that the guys look at the floor and the women are going, yeah, I told you, it's you. You do it too. But it's totally true. And at that point, if I'm really honest, my heart sank. Because on the one hand, I had this stuff that I enjoy. I enjoy the pleasures of money. I enjoy the good things. But on the other hand, I just had no attachment. I had no emotion. I had no consciousness, as Richard was saying. No broadband consciousness of what was going on. So I knew that I was going to have to do something different. I had absolutely no idea what it was, but I knew I was going to have to do something different. The first thing is to learn how to use a clicker. That's the first thing I needed to do differently. And I knew that I wanted to do something different, so I set about a sort of an exploration, if you like, a sort of finding out where I was going, finding out what I was doing. And I knew that if I wanted to do something different, that I would probably have to get some new skills. I had no idea what I was going to do, and I was sitting one day at my desk, sort of in the early part of the new year, and I sort of thought to myself, what is it I'm going to do? And I booked myself on a sales training course because I'm really, really interested in sales. And I booked myself on the sales training course. And I thought to myself, I think that's buzzing, so I'm going to stop now. I sort of thought to myself, this would be a good thing to do. Sales, good skill to have. Guessed that things were going to start to get a little bit tough. And I booked myself on a sales course. And I saw the speaker, and he was amazing. And he was really, really, really inspiring. And I went back to my office, and I went back to the desk, and I Googled him, and I noticed this thing, NLP. And this is where my fascination with NLP came along. And I got really, really curious about it. So I booked myself on my practitioner training. And you know what it's like when you find something that starts to answer questions in your head? You get really, really passionate, really involved in it. Just a matter of interest, how many of you, by a show of hands, are trained in NLP? Yeah, fantastic. So you know what I'm talking about, and you know the power of starting to use these techniques. But also, I imagine that you know that when you start to do these things, life sort of changes its perspective. And actually, you can kind of get hung up on the techniques and pursuing more techniques. I can see a couple of heads nodding. And so in my 15.5 ways to keep yourself in the slow lane, what I'm going to do is show you what I did and how some of that didn't work, and how some of the things that I did do that accelerated got me out of the slow lane and into the fast lane. So the first thing was I needed new skills. I knew that. But the error I made was that I focused relentlessly on the skills. So I kind of became a training junkie, in a sense. I had the money to fund it. And one of my cupboards at home is a testimony to this. It is piled high with... Anybody else got this kind of cupboard with books? Yeah, a load of you. Oh, thank you. God, I'm not the only one. That's such a relief. It's piled high with books, with manuals, that kind of thing. And they are good. They are worthwhile. There's no doubt about it. But they're only worthwhile when you start to utilize it. So I did. And I got my new business up and running. And I was quite excited about that, to be honest. I left my old corporate job. I used to be a school teacher many years ago, and so coaching was kind of a natural place. I loved nurturing people, loved working with people. So I started my own business. I utilized my existing contacts. So I started within my own galaxy, which seemed like a good place to start. I knew nothing about marketing because the business I ran was very traditional and had a very, very fixed client base. And we just had loads and loads of repeat business. So the challenge wasn't in that. So I really didn't know much about marketing. So I went straight from my corporate world, straight to using existing contacts, and I got some really well-paid work, but mostly as a consultant. And so I started to do the following. I started to sit on my laurels. So you can see as I cut down to the bottom there, my error in this is assuming that having a few clients means you have a developing business. And it doesn't. Not at all. Which is why the things that we're taught and given by the experts and Dan around funnel filling, etc., are so, so vital. They're so important to get the grip of those. And I just didn't have it. Worse than that, I didn't see it coming. So it came, this is probably back end of 2009 into 2010. And I finished my NLP, I'd done my trainer's training. And I was invited to go out and coach on another trainer's training in Thailand for a month. I thought, this is fantastic. I thought, I've made it. This is brilliant. So I was out there. I still had some well-paid work that was keeping me going. I took a month out. Really, really enjoyed my time there. Got some fantastic learnings out of it. But while I was away, some stuff changed. And when I got back, I went back to my contacts, picked up the phone. When shall I come and see you? Well, things are a little tougher now, Dave, and we've decided that actually yours is one of the things that we're going to chop. So I tried the reframing, etc., and it didn't work. And you know what it's like when you do something and it doesn't work? There tends to be a pattern of not work. I made the next call, same thing, same thing. And I had one hell of a shock to the system. Because that Christmas, I earned 0. I had never, ever had that since I started work at 22 years old. And I tell you, the worst thing I found was I was so ashamed. I was so embarrassed at the fact that the way I felt it, nobody wanted to work with me. And that really, really knocked me for 6. At that point, I started to utilize my learnings. Well, you would. I'd invested all this training, so at least I spotted I might have a go at using it. And so I started to think to myself, well, what am I good at? Mapped those things out, set myself some goals, all that kind of stuff. But to be honest, my head was so full of all of these techniques and whatever, it was like massive overwhelm. I didn't really know where to go or really what to do with it. Have any of you had that, where you're just so overwhelmed with all of this information? But how do you actually apply it? How do you start to do the how, which Richard spoke about, to make it work for you? But the one good thing I did was I came to a conference, and you see my little picture at the bottom there. I started to talk to a friend, and he's standing at the back, and many of you know him, Kevin Hall, our coach. And I started to talk to him because I'd encountered Dan Bradbury then, and my route into Dan Bradbury was through the APCTC. So some of you will have seen me yesterday evening leading one of the sessions. So I was starting to at least take some form of activity. But the basic problem was I had no clear idea, of who I wanted to work with and where on earth to find them. Now, if you can't answer that, I'm afraid you will stay, probably not even in the slow lane. You'll probably stay on the hard shoulder for a long, long time. You need to get that clarity. So you've heard Dan talk about niche. You really, really must get that. Now, once you really get to this point where things are starting to rock and roll in a not good way, I found that I got really, really good at doing things that weren't helpful for building my business. In fact, I almost became a master of it. I became really, really successful at doing totally disastrous things. So I had a website, and because I was an NLP trainer, I thought I could do NLP training, I could do coaching, I could do speaking, I could do all sorts of things. And my website was like a supermarket. Come, please buy anything. You know, I just hope that something sticks. Total disaster. I then set goals, but I became distracted by the obstacles. We heard Dan talk about obstacles earlier on. So I would kind of set a goal, and then something would appear in the way, and I'd think, oh, maybe my new goal should be over here then, and I'll wander over here and have a look at that. I suffered from what Dan Kennedy is calling currently shiny object syndrome as well. Always chasing the quick win. There must be something else I can do that'll make it all happen faster for me. This was the worst one, as I actually started to forget why I'd done all of that in the first place. So I started to lose that passion that was driven by the reaction to what I'd seen with my kids earlier on. And I really didn't know what was going on at all. It was a most unusual feeling for me. So I'm back to the drawing board. But with a little help from my friend, I did start to figure out what my strengths are and how to utilize them. I set supportive goals, and this was really, really, really important. And I started to understand the difference between dream, want, need, and settle. So how many of you set a goal where you dreamt of a really, really powerful outcome? By a show of hands, how many of you set a goal like that? Fantastic. And of those people, how many of you had a, but I'd settle for in the back of your mind? Yeah, and how many people got the I'd settle for? And that's what I was doing. So even though I was starting to take action, and I'll tell you about that in a moment, I still had some issues going on that were sabotaging what was happening with my success. Then, by working away at it, I gradually became aware of what I really wanted. And here's where some of the things that I was now learning, bearing in mind I've been in Dan's program probably for 2-3 months now, started to pay off. So I used a joint venture and got 100 people into a seminar. Essentially, I went to a local David Lloyd gym and said, look, I can talk about success strategies. You've got people into developing themselves. You stick them in the room. I'll talk for free. They did all the marketing and sold some stuff on the back of that. Bingo. So I think I made around £5,000, £6,000, £7,000 off the back of that. And the gym hired me to go back and coach their staff. So that was a total winner. I repeated that strategy with other clients. I love the JV thing. I totally love it, where I can go along to people. I've done it with IT companies in terms of software sales, that kind of relationship, where I can go in and talk about the psychology of success and how to accelerate your selling. They deliver the seminar, put the people in the room. Nowadays, they actually pay me to write it as well, so it's become a really, really good thing. Fantastic. I found associate work. I still didn't have the confidence with the marketing, so I found other companies, training companies, where adding NLP in would make a massive difference for them. They already had the client base. They had trainings running, so I just went in, walk in, delivered the training. Again, another great, great strategy. As I was saying, I ran the APCTC Bexley Mastermind Group. The other thing that that gave me was the opportunity to get to know the industry better, to work with other coaches, see their issues, and work out how I could fit in more successfully. I started just before summer a program that I called Coach's Den. I put out, if you like, into the Facebook universe a couple of quite strange videos, but I actually got people contacting me rather than me having to go out. And what I thought was going to be a group program turned into one-on-one and quite well-paid coaching as well. So again, really, really successful. However, even though I was becoming aware of what I really wanted, this is the killer. And this is the one that stops us from flying. I kind of half had a go at it. So I don't know how many of you have had that experience where you sort of know what you want, but do you really go for it 100%, honestly, truthfully, hand on heart? I didn't. I was kind of at the 50% thing. More work with Kevin, more exploration. Also took a profile called Wealth Dynamics. And finally, Finally, just this week, I started working with my ideal client that I'd really wanted when I first thought about it all that time ago. So I let go of all this sort of peripheral activities I was engaging in, and I really focused, and I just took massive action, massive action. And here's the thing. I went from 0 to around 2K to 5K to around 12.5 to now it's around 20K a month. So from a fiscal point of view, it's fantastic. But to be honest, I don't want to talk to you about numbers. What I want to re-echo is exactly what's been said this morning by someone as great as Richard. Okay? You are here to change the world. We are here to change the world. It has never, ever, ever been more needed than now. So I would strongly encourage you, and myself too, still on this journey, whatever you need to do this weekend to find whatever makes you want to be on this stage, do it. Because there is only one chance. Life, as far as I'm aware, is not a rehearsal. So bearing that in mind, how many of you would love to be on this stage next time by a show of hands? Good, we got more than before, so part of my work is done. Thank you so much for listening. My name's Dave Kibby, and I wish you every success over the weekend. Thank you.